Welcome to the Cognitive Vigilance podcast. I'm here with Rin and Phemoid. I discovered Phemoid from actually that Whatever podcast episode with your cute little beret. And it was very fun to watch because I feel like that was the first time I ever saw Brian get kind of stumped. And it was enjoyable. It gave me great pleasure to watch that happen. I would say that though I don't think that we might agree on everything because I consider myself a feminist, but more so like Paglia feminist. We probably have like some differences which we can get into, but
I'm pretty Paglia feminist also.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know because I didn't know because sometimes I was like I couldn't tell if you were more on like the Dworkin, McKinnon kind of side.
Definitely not McKinnon. Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
Okay. So you can tell me how you feel about this. So he says, Brian, school's delusional feminist, which I was like, okay.
You cannot deny that feminism is a man-hating ideology.
I can deny that.
What is the core tenet of feminism? The patriarchy theory. Do you believe in the patriarchy?
Yeah.
Do you believe in the patriarchy theory?
Yes.
Under patriarchy, are women oppressed?
Yes.
Under patriarchy, are men oppressors?
Yes.
So are you oppressed?
In some ways.
How?
One form of oppression that all women face is subjugation in the form of their sexuality. I think that women are forced to perform their sexuality.
What do you mean by perform their sexuality?
Like, I think that women become sexual objects in the eyes of the patriarchy. I think that a lot of men view themselves that way, and I think that a lot of women are comfortable viewing themselves that way.
Well, that sounds like zero accountability to me. You're putting the blame on men for women sexualizing themselves.
So
I've never seen that edit. It's really funny. I feel like he had to edit a lot of that to make himself look like he schooled me in any way. I mean, yeah, it's very silly. I mean, his whole thing, I don't even know what his whole thing is, honestly. I wrote an article for EV Magazine about being on the Whatever podcast. I don't know if you read it.
I did read it.
Yeah, where I just talked about Brian basically being like a projection of what all of his viewers want to be, and that he is sort of awkward, and he is sort of, like the he's certainly not an alpha male, right? But he's made it work, and that's like what I mean. But that's also a good thing, I think, to tell. Like,
say he's like a sigma male or beta sigma.
These phrases are so funny to me.
I know they are so funny, but like,
yeah, I definitely sigma. I mean, he's created a business.
Yeah, right.
So you gotta, good for him.
Is his stance that men don't objectify women? Like, is that his like take there?
I think he was just trying to get me, like, he was just trying to look for something that sounded good, because I'm sure if pushed on it, there's no way that he'd think that was.
I couldn't imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think he's just trying to like make himself look really good to all of his like Indian viewers that speak broken English. So,
is that what the majority of the chat is? Like,
absolutely, yes, absolutely. Majority of the chat is like bots from like foreign countries.
Well, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what? I actually was considering going on the Whatever podcast, and I like had the opportunity to do it, but then I got pregnant and I was like, we're not gonna do this right now.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. So what kind of got you to go on there, and like how was that experience?
So I saw a couple viral clips, and I was just like, I feel like I could go on there. Like I feel like I could. So I reached out to them, and then they had me on. They had basically no idea who I was. And it was just it was when I just started blowing up on, I've had multiple phases with Twitter. One was in like 2018 where I was like huge sex worker, gained like 100,000 followers overnight, like very much like Belle Delphine era type of whatever. Then got banned for saying slurs. So then I was off for like years and years and years. And then I got back on, I want to say like 2 years ago. And then I was like very, very staunch Dworkin feminist, like staunch Dworkin, and it was like all of my anger from being in sex work was just like in one place, and I was like very blinded fully by the anger. So I was just very, I've mellowed out since then. I think I've found an ideology that I can sort of sit at and feel comfortable at, and where it's not like reactionary, I'd say, because I feel like maybe 2 years ago I was very reactionary. Oh my gosh, sorry if you can hear it. There's like a huge lightning and thunderstorm happening right now. I don't know if you can hear it. It's so crazy. It's like the worst it's ever been. I was going on a tangent. I'm so sorry.
So what would you consider like your kind of where did you land ideologically?
I mean, I really like polia. Like I really, really do. I feel kinship also that Camille is also a woman with autism who's a little male-brained. I think, I think that sometimes I feel that way. So there's that. I mean, it's really hard for me. Even reading Dworkin, I think my brain, I find that I'm not trying to be like a pick-me or anything. I find that my brain, it's not that I've had trouble with female friends. I just have trouble. It's been easier for me to communicate with men throughout my life.
I have this exact same thing, so I get it.
Yeah, like it is just, so I think with a lot of the feminist stuff, I sort of felt a little lost because I didn't feel like a regular woman, which I think is why I also found Dworkin to be so healing at one point in time, because I was like, oh, everything is a mask that I put on, and it was like very black and white, and I was just like peeling back the layers, and I was like, I'm actually a genderless, sexless being, which is sort of like where you get after reading Dworkin.
Oh, no. That's where you landed.
No. So then after that, especially like after getting married and stuff like that, and then doing a personal inventory of like my life and the men in my life who are fantastic. The men in my life are genuinely fantastic. I'm very lucky to have had very limited negative experiences with men in my life, like very, very limited. Like most men, like my dad's great, my grandpa's great, my husband's incredible. Like there's not been anything crazy there. So reading Dworkin, I always felt like there was a disconnect there also, because all of these men in my family never really did all these things that Dworkin said, but I was so angry that I had convinced myself that it was most men, and I was just lucky. And then finally I landed somewhere after the anger, after I had exercised it. And then also seeing where like those logical conclusions end. Like I was in like Dworkin feminist spaces, and they all fucking hated me because they were all separatists. They were all female separatists. And they're like, you have a husband, you're like a handmaid. And I was like, what? It was just so crazy. And they were saying that sex, like all sex is rape with a man and a woman. I was just like, Jesus Christ, like a lot, like, so I mellowed out. After being around women like that, I mellowed out. And then I found poly after Dworkin. And then I was like, yeah, this is like way more my speed. And now I'm just, I mean, what I say now is I don't know shit about shit, but I know my life. And I know other people's lives around me, and I have like a view of my world, right? Like I try not to make huge prescriptions, except for the ones that are like that I think are obvious. But yeah, and then also sometimes I tee it up a little bit for Twitter, because that's what you got to do.
I know, right? Yeah, you're a fabulous Twitter troll. I love it. Yeah, I in high school, I took a femlit class, and I was kind of leaning in like that almost like Dworkin space. But I ended up not liking it, like, because I wore short skirts, and I liked to, like, I don't know, I like to dress in a very feminine way, and my femlit teacher hated me and treated me like shit because of that. And I had another teacher tell me that if I got raped, like that, it like I was basically asking for it, and I was like, "Jeez, okay, bro."
Yeah, very feminist thing to say.
I know. So I think, and then I kind of like moved away from like that. I would have called myself probably anti-feminist in my early 20s, and then. I discovered a Paglia, and now I just say I'm a pag femme, because it's the only thing I can really articulate to separate it from like because I'm not really a rad femme.
Yeah.
And I'm not like a lib femme either. Like, I don't know. I'm like,
totally. No, I'm right there with you. I especially feel the same way. After reading Dworkin, I don't know if you remember this, but I cut off all my hair 2 years ago. I gave myself a pixie cut. I stopped wearing makeup. I was like, I'm not doing any of this. And then I had a full identity crisis, which was, I think, good for me because I think I had to separate my sexual personae from, the rest of myself to fully understand myself and what that meant to me and if it was real or not, because a lot of the sex that I'd had before meeting my partner was sex that was paid for, or sex that wasn't for me. I wasn't orgasming. It wasn't sex that was that was of value to me really in any way. It was just performance. So I think I had to completely build a new sexuality in a way that was natural and not in a way that was because I'd been doing sex work since I was 16 basically. So it was and even before then I was on Omegle doing very illegal things, very too young. So yeah, I had to completely separate myself, and then only in the absence of those things that made me feel sexy and feminine and made me feel powerful, I was like, oh, maybe I do actually just like this. Maybe I actually do feel powerful, and maybe I actually am a sexual being and I like it, and I like the power that I have over men as a sexual being, because I think that Dworkin sort of gets lost that you're always oppressed when a man is viewing you sexually. But I don't think that that's necessarily true. I think it can be. Mm-hmm. But I think that there's also there's no real answer about stuff like this. It's
I think in a created space where it's an opt-in as opposed to always forced on, then it becomes much more. And Brandy and I were talking about that, where, you can be in sexual spaces, sex parties and things of that nature. And it's when the space is very comfortable, you can almost lean into tropes or lean into archetypes very, very hard. And you can find a lot of that much more empowering than you would in the real world.
Yeah.
So, and I know, because you started sex work very young. And so do you still do sex work?
Passively. I don't really, once in a while a man will be like, can I send you money for being an inferior male? And I'm like, yeah, you can send me money. Or
like FinDom type stuff?
Yeah, some stuff like that. My OnlyFans is still up as an archive. I'll post a video where I'm flashing every 6 months, because you have to post something every 6 months or else your OnlyFans will get locked and you don't have access to the money. But I'm not it's very passive, and it's just when I want to do it, and it's sort of a scam when people are buying it because they're paying me for nothing almost. But yeah, so yes and no. Yeah.
How do you feel about sex? Because I've watched a few. I actually watched one of your videos where you kind of talked about it a little bit. Where do you kind of land on that right now? Are you on the ban it, don't ban it?
Well, I've never wanted to ban it. Yeah, I've never wanted to ban it. I think I've always really liked the Nordic model in respect to in-person sex work. Making decriminalizing sex work, but then criminalizing buying the sex. I think that probably works the best. Also, it's hard because I'm in a very privileged position where I'm not doing survival sex work, so I can have the consent that I have is way different than the consent that I had when I was 18 and starving and didn't have a place to live, and I was I need money. Mm-hmm. So I can do it very passively now in a way that isn't desperate, and I think that that's where real consent is. Do I also think that it's a positive thing that any man can open their phone and have access to any woman that they want, like a meat market? I probably don't think that that's positive, but what are we going to do about that? There's not much. I think that the floodgates have already opened, right? Internet porn has already changed civilization. So I don't know if we can ever... that was sort of Pandora's box. I think that there should be regulations. I think that you should be 21 to be doing sex work. Anything like OnlyFans, pornography, anything like that. I think that the age should be 21 instead of 18. Just because of how that fundamentally changes your brain at that age. I mean, we're adults at 18, but like, are we adults? I think about how I was when I was 18 now, and I'm like, holy fuck. Like, my sister's 19, she's about to turn 20, and I'm like, you're retarded. Like, you're the dumbest person I've ever met in my life. Like, how, I can't believe I was having sex for money when I was your age. Like, it just, it's crazy to me that ever happened. So there's some stipulations like the Nordic model or like a switching of an age gate, or like OnlyFans has something where it has a referral program, so you make money for referring someone. Would love to get rid of that.
Yeah.
I would like more. I'm going to college right now, and I hope to open a nonprofit or some sort of institution or change laws or something so that it's easier for women to get out of sex work, because that's the hardest part, is that once you're in, it's just like impossible to get out. And it also fundamentally changes your brain, like the same way drug dealing does. If you can make quick money, you're never going to not want that. So it's I don't know, I'm everywhere with it. Like some days I'm like, I want to ban all of it, and I want to be a nun, and I think that every woman should be a nun. And then other days I'm like, oh no, women should exert their sexual power over men. It's the only power that we have over them. It's like, it's shifting.
Do you think there are models that are like particularly like your least favorite, or you're like, do you like the way like Amsterdam and some of the other like legal like red light districts operate? Or
it's hard to say, because the women who are in those brothels have some of the highest suicide and mental illness rates of any job ever. So even then, like, those women are not doing it because they love fucking and they love sex. They're doing it because it's easy money and it's quick. And, then men come in, sexual tourism, men come in from every country to mistreat these women in every imaginable way. It's not like these women are not getting raped. I mean, they're getting raped every single day. Like, there's a man who comes in who's morbidly obese and smells like shit, and she literally cannot say no. So I like, the best case scenario is everything is on the internet. Like, that is the best case scenario, where you're mostly safe, right? Doing it from the comfort of your home. You can say no, and you can feel comfortable about saying no, because nobody's going to hurt you in front of you. But I also understand that there are things like, someone asked me the other day, what about sex workers for like people who are disabled? And where I don't think that everyone has a right to sex or a right to have sex with a female, I do think that like some of those women who are doing that work for like people who are quadriplegic, I mean, it's
a form of therapy, in my
totally
opinion.
I
managed a strip club. I've managed a strip club for a long time. Not anymore, but because I actually worked in the adult entertainment industry, but I was never a sex worker. I started out doing the door, and then moved on to being a manager when I moved to Boston. And we had people like that, like people that were paraplegics and widows and a lot of that stuff. And that did happen where, and those honestly, like I feel like the girls liked those clients the best. Like, I feel like they were like the best ones, probably because it like felt like you were actually, you were helping someone.
I mean, I think I look back at the experiences that I had escorting, and I people always bring up to me like, oh, you were a prostitute. And let me just say that this is a little bit of stolen valor, because I only ever slept with 3 people when I was an escort. So it wasn't like I was doing like a lot of stuff, a lot of crazy stuff. So it does feel like stolen valor when I talk about it. But of the people that I slept with, like, they were all pretty just autistic. Like, they really struggled to make connections with women in real life. And they had all this money, whether it be from tech or whatever, and they, like, just didn't know how to have relationships. And they, mostly were respectful. But, yeah, so I think that there's not a necessity for it. I just, I think sometimes I dream of, like, a union, right? Like, where there could be, like, tests to make sure that you're mentally equipped, but then I'm like, oh god, we're government, there's like sex workers under the government, like I don't know.
Well, I don't even think it would have to be that, but more so like women kind of getting more in control of the industry themselves. A lot of strip clubs are owned by men as well. And very male run, like I there are a few that are very successful. I think there's one in New Orleans that's run by a woman, but I do think that like having women kind of take control of the industry would be a good thing. I think that would be beneficial for even like for prostitution as well. I'm
I
for
can weigh in on that one actually.
yeah,
I don't know. Does this podcast know that I've done sex work and still do sometimes?
probably. I
I
don't
feel like I've
know.
mentioned it from time, but
Mhm.
so I don't do it in this country, and I tend to only work with other sex workers in like kink oriented scenes. But the person who owns the very large escort prostitution organization that I work through when I go there is a woman who like basically changed the political landscape to make it safer for sex workers and change the landscape of the laws and things of that nature. And it's a much I don't have that much experience, but the experience I do have, it is absolutely way better run, and the people are much happier in that environment. But it's a whole, yeah, I don't know. It feels a lot less exploitive
Yeah.
because you know,
Yeah, I think there is something to be said about power and what it does to any psyche, because I think that even a female pimp can have the same pitfalls as male pimps.
absolutely.
Maybe
So
if
it's
they're
just
not
like,
looking at it like being a pimp, like I think that's the problem. More like okay, it's like when you work like how like a salon structure, like a lot of salons they have like the person that owns the building, but everyone else is kind of like an independent contractor. She's
yeah,
not their boss. They are all their own business owner.
yeah.
Everyone is basically owning their own business. She is just like facilitating the space
And supplying security and
Yeah.
supplying, yeah, stuff like that. No, I mean, yeah, that makes sense.
And everybody being able to opt in, like you always
Yeah.
have the ability to screen in multiple ways, and all this is always super important to comfort.
Yeah, I think that there are women who are suited for sex work. It's hard to know like internally, I think, whether or not that's you. Like I think when I was doing it, I was like, yeah, I can shut off my emotions, like whatever. And I think sometimes for months stretches I can. But then it all, comes back. And
I
there's
think when you're young, like I think I actually agree with you in regards to the age thing. I'd potentially say 25, but like
I agree with you. Yeah.
but I think that when you're really young, you don't fully understand the consequences.
Totally.
And same with OnlyFans. Like I think it wouldn't be bad if OnlyFans actually, made the age limit higher. And the other thing I dislike is OnlyFans doesn't have a search algorithm, right? So people have to promote themselves outside of the, and I think that's fucking horrible.
Yeah.
I've known a lot of strippers that would went into OnlyFans after the club.
Yeah.
The one thing that they like about the club, though, is the anonymity. They get more anonymity because
Totally.
they don't have to promote themselves outside. Nobody knows. I know so many girls that like stripped in college at a strip club.
Totally.
Nobody knows that they did that. It's just like this little thing that happened in their past, and I don't think that they have a lot of like, hang-ups about it because it was just like this brief time period, and they didn't really like, I think a lot of hang-ups can also come from the social shame from other people. Like other people being like, "Oh, you're like a bad person," and like the stigma of what you're doing. I think that can also cause a lot of like mental I think that probably causes a lot of the problems because like a lot of girls might not even feel as bad about what they're doing, but the fact that everyone is like telling them like no one's ever going to want to love you. You should feel bad about this. Like I think that actually has a lot of can be very damaging.
I think so too.
There are clubs in Germany called FKK clubs where people can go and like opt into prostitution as well. And that's an interesting model. I mean, it's aimed at like tourists doing it, like tourists selling themselves to like locals, but professional workers.
Wait, can you repeat that? What?
So there's clubs in Germany called FKK clubs where you can go and they're basically just like swinger clubs, but it is acceptable to proposition people with money. Like, and if you say no, it's like that. They're very stern on the rules, but it is a place, and like sex workers will go there. The thing is, though, it's actually not super profitable for professionals because that's not.
There are people offering it for free, so it's like the market's kind of fucked.
Yeah, so it's not like so. There are people who will go, or the sex workers who like do enjoy sex with like a certain kind of like person might find them more there than through their like usual channels, and they might like book clients while working there or something like that. But it's an interesting model, but it's totally aimed at tourists. Like kinky Taurus and not.
Yeah, I think I honestly think the minority of sex workers are people who are extremely sexually adventurous, though. Like I think the majority, the majority of sex workers are people who are obviously doing either forced. Obviously, we know that most women are trafficked in sex work, but then I think the biggest chunk is also like people who are doing it out of necessity, and then I think there's this very small chunk of people like Ayla, who's doing it for the love of the game, right? Like she's just doing it because she likes it. She likes having sex with a bunch of people, and she's like adventurous that way. But yeah, I think that is a like just vast minority.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know if I think that would be well, maybe not Ayla. She's definitely a minority, but like
yeah,
I don't know if I would say it's like always from like extreme desperation, because I've known a lot of girls that like didn't need to do it, but they did it because it was just they didn't want to have to go work a different job. Like
but
it's
that's what's saying though, that kind of having access to easy money with no escalation is hard to get out of.
Yeah. I mean I get that. I get that. I just
and then you're caught in the meat grinder of of sex work, where you're just like, well, how else can I make money like this? And then that's the worst thing. I have friends, most of my friends passively do sex work. Like even if they have other jobs, they'll like sell a nude here and there. And it's like, I think that's still, and I know that, you know, a lot of like what you think is the shame is, or the negative effects is like social steering, like how people like make you feel about this job. But I also do think that like having that much sexual tension and for money fundamentally does change your attitudes about sex forever. Like I mean, they talk about pair bonding all the time, right, with stuff like this, and it, like, I hate to say it, I love my husband so much. It's true. Like I really totally, I struggle with, well, now I just don't even believe in monogamy. Thank God I found a partner who has been in multiple open relationships before me, and you know, that's just sort of our model with each other. But it is like very hard for me to not whenever I'm bored, I'm like gonna go get some sexual attention. Like it's so ingrained in me that like it has fundamentally changed who I am. So I know this about some of my other friends as well, that it's, you know, similar, maybe more like a lot of my friends who have slept with even more people than I have very similar things where they'll start to get a little stir crazy in a relationship. I think that does just happen.
I mean, do you think that an aspect of this is also due to social media in general?
Sure.
Because I just watched a great podcast last night with Jonathan Hyatt. It was like a trigonometry one, and he was talking about Gen Z in particular, but he was saying that because Gen Z got access to social media at such a young age and like screen time and things like that their brains are kind of not neurologically wired the same way as everyone else, as like the older generations, which has made them like have struggle with this executive function. And for women, like there is this aspect of it where it's like they care a lot about like being sexy and beautiful, and like that there's like this societal incentive.
Yeah, totally.
I think that there's always been a societal incentive to be beautiful, because obviously there's like men are biologically wired to incentivize you to be attractive. So like I think that's always going to be a thing, but I think that the internet and social media kind of like really amplified it. And I don't know if I think maybe because the internet, how the fuck old was I? Like the internet came out when I was like in 5th grade, I think, but it was like dial up, you know, like
I remember dial up.
But you're a little younger than me, I think, right?
26. I'm 26.
26, yeah. Like, but you probably like you remember fast. You probably had fast internet at some point in your childhood. Like I did not, like
around 13. But we were in the trailer park, so we had dial up for a little longer than we should have, I think.
But I think that like there was like a little bit of a difference with like the newer generations in their ability to kind of like process these things, and like I think that might be having a huge effect, just social media
totally.
Like,
I think that's
even
definitely true.
Get out of the, like, even if we're not talking about porn, just like social media.
Yeah,
like he made a
Are we not also simultaneously seeing the younger generation like also kind of care less about kind of classic beauty norms and like embracing kind of like
No,
weird?
that's a farce. That's a
Is it?
fucking
Okay.
farce.
So
It is. We
I'm not-
see it because it's profitable, because everyone's trying to be diversive and everyone's trying to like, there's this huge, it's like the overthrowing of like a beautiful monarchy where now there's all these ugly people who are like, no, we're gonna take back the night. But they're not, like, you saw like once they got Victoria's Secret to like have like fat ugly girls on, everyone was like, oh, we're not watching this anymore. Like the majority of people still want to cultivate beauty. They still want to see hot, attractive women. Like obviously men still want shaved women. Like they still want shaved, beautiful, slender women. So I don't know.
I actually appreciate that because I live in a bubble that is not reflective of like the real world. Like there's tons of like, hair, there's tons of like body shapes of all and that's what I mean. Like I'm not on the various internet spheres. I'm not plugged in anything.
Rin's polyamorous. Yeah, Rin, give a little explanation.
Hippie. So I live in the fucking the towns where polyamory is like kind of legal. Like I'm up in the fucking, so all of the people I'm surrounded by are like, it's a very passive woke state, like where like all the people, so I don't have my thumb on the pulse. Like I'm like, oh yeah, there's all kinds of people like who are really nice to each other, and and it's funny because we joke about a group called the pretty polys, and there's a group of people who are very kind of classically attractive and they all kind of orbit together, and then there's a lot, because a lot of people in my community are still just like traditionally hot but don't necessarily like aim for that. Like there's a lot of like alternative beauty, there's a lot of like, and
I've been in those spaces. Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. And it's really like, I don't know, I'm seeing a rise of that, but it's also probably like because I live in a place that celebrates that, the people who like that are coming here. So I have no idea. I have no real sense of how the world actually looks because I live in this bubble of slutty, sex positive people.
I feel like when I was in the polyamorous, like,
you were in the orbit. You came to some parties.
No, I know, but I feel like I wasn't very attracted to. I don't think that there were that many pretty polys. Like,
wow.
There's only like a very small.
I think the very hot people who are open are usually a little more quiet about it.
Yeah.
From
what I understand.
Invite only is a thing that happens.
I love that exclusivity.
Yeah, like all of Hollywood, literally all of Hollywood. I grew up in Los Angeles. Every single couple that you can imagine is swinging. Every single couple you can imagine is swinging. And I know first fucking hand, like there is every couple you imagine. Like none of them are monogamous. Literally none of them. But you never really hear about it because it's like, it's invite only basically. It's their own thing. Hey, we like your vibe at like an Oscar party. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yep. We saw you from across the bar.
Yeah.
I mean, I love when people like B, C, or D list celebrity couples are like approaching. Like, I know a couple of people who have stories from like minor celebritas who are like, "What's up?"
Yeah.
Like that were swingers or like.
Oh yeah. Well, they were just people who were in LA.
They're just freaky. Yeah, they're just everyone's freaky over there.
I mean, New York. Some of the best like parties were invite only New York parties that were like insane, and that was much more like money. It was just like insane amounts of money at these parties, and like they were fun. But I don't know. It's an interesting aspect because I like being in a community that doesn't like ascribe to those sort of things, because you have the bigger community where everybody can kind of be fond of each other and all that sort of thing, and then you invite the people that you're attracted to and you have fun with. And
I have the male gaze.
Yeah, okay. I mean,
I'm hot people.
Like I've been.
Well, we're biologically like sort of designed to be nicer and kinder to people who are better looking. Like we are. Yeah. That is just what we do. Like it's a survival instinct. It's natural eugenics. Like we just do that. So
I've been accused of being fat phobic many times.
Good. That means you're doing something right.
And
see, Go ahead. Don't let me cut you off.
I mean fat phobic and like that I only hire like attractive people.
You have a good counter argument for that. So I do think that you can defend yourself. I mean, like it doesn't mean you're not, but you have a good argument against
I have a good argument to defend myself. Yeah. Which is that so I produce burlesque shows. Actually, because you do you do burlesque or you're into burlesque?
I did for a second, yeah.
Nice, yeah. So I produce burlesque shows. Rin's actually my MC. It's a great MC.
I occasionally perform as well.
Oh yeah, he occasionally does a little striptease. It's pretty great. And I have been accused many times of fat phobia and of only hiring attractive people, like fit people. But I mean, my argument is, which is a true argument. I'm not like, it's true.
That's why
It's
I
the
defend
fact,
you. I'm willing
yeah,
to defend
like
you 'cause you have a good
it's the
argument.
fact that like I hire people for talent, and these like when you're a dancer, like the most talented people tend to be fit.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm sorry, like usually the more overweight people, their type of act is typically not what I would hire, because
Totally.
it's more so meant to be, because my show's more like I don't know how you explain it, Ren, but more like high end of.
So you
High
have
end.
so it's easy because some of the people who perform at your show are way above the caliber of our show's league. Like it's not
Yeah.
anything to do. Like it's just that like some of these people are like literally like celebrity dance instructors in LA. Like they're like, oh yeah, like my day job is to organize like the music video choreography for these things. Oh, and I also do this like shit fucking box show in fucking Cambridge.
Well,
Like,
damn, that's how you feel about my show. Fuck.
dude, the show is phenomenal. I absolutely love being a part of it. But are you going to tell me that some of the people who come to that show aren't like throwing us a bone?
What do you mean? Oh, you're saying the performers?
Yeah.
Well, I was the first. All those people, I was the first
I
person
know,
to
I
ever
know.
hire them
That's
to be
why
a
they keep
burlesque
coming
performer.
back. That's why they keep
I
coming
know,
back.
because
Yeah.
I find burlesque performers not in the burlesque scene, because the burlesque scene's super woke. So I look into like
Yeah, it is.
like choreography scenes. Like I go into like other kind of areas. I don't look at other burlesque dancers, because I've actually always struggled whenever I hire someone that's like already a burlesque dancer. It usually ends up badly. So I stick with more I find girls that are basically just choreographers, just do like dance, and then I'm like, have you ever considered doing burlesque? And kind of give them their first opportunity if they seem like they're,
And then they knock
have
it out of the
have
park.
skill. Yeah.
I've also been. I don't want to say that it's been remarked that I tend to date attract. I mean, I feel like I have a very diverse like body type Like I'm attracted to lots of different body types.
You're like,
But-
yeah, I love ugly people sometimes.
I don't think I've ever dated an ugly person. I think I've only really dated like very attractive people, or people who are as attractive or much more attractive than me, even within that sort of like body. Like so, like I don't need somebody to be thin for me to find them beautiful, but there
Mhm.
are aspects of body types that like I like archetypes, and when somebody is a beautiful version of their archetype, I tend to be attracted to that.
Yeah.
Brandy, you've met most of my partners. I feel like it's not like I
think the two that I know are very attractive.
one of them we
But
told
one of them I used to date. So
one of them
and
I told the other one
I
that
do
you
think she's very
You guys are
attractive.
Eskimo sisters.
the other we are actually,
Well,
yeah.
me and him used to date too.
Oh wow.
So
it's a
I
whole
dated-
thing.
Yeah, so I dated Rin and his partner,
Mhm.
Emily, for a while. So
you got brought to one of our corporate Christmas events.
Yeah.
We were the first triad at a corporate Christmas event.
yeah,
Oh my gosh, what a scandal.
I know. Really pushing the boundaries.
good times, good times.
Yeah, wow. I'm always telling my husband that we need a girlfriend. I'm always telling him we need a girlfriend, someone to help me with laundry, someone to help me with
You
the
want a
dishes.
sister wife?
Yeah, ideal scenario, genuinely. I like ideal scenario. And everyone freaks out when I say that, and I'm like, no, seriously. I'm like, I want a coven of women who like just hang out with each other. Maybe like my husband has a harem. We like switch nights or whatever. I'm obviously top dog, obviously.
Yeah.
But other women, and then we on full moons, go outside, dance naked, and
Yeah, it
do
sounds
our
like a great
thing.
party.
Dude, that is my fucking ideal.
What
So would
about?
you-
Have you heard of Mormonism? Because I think
I'm in
FDLS.
I'm in Utah.
Are you
I
in
mean,
Utah?
Yes,
You can
that
do it.
could
I'm
be-
sure.
Yeah.
But I don't know, because like the Mormons. But then I don't know. They don't seem as fun.
Do y'all
No.
do you all practice like what flavor of non-monogamy do you consider yourself if you're comfy sharing?
Well, we've it's sort of just like monogamish. Like most of the year we're pretty monogamous, and then if someone piques our interest, we'll explore it, which has only happened a few times. It's not like I feel like I have my own opinions about this. I think that if you're constantly looking, there's something that your partner lacks. Like if you're constantly trying to step outside and trying to like quest for something, I think probably the primary relationship isn't as strong as it should be. But I think if you keep it,
somebody who is constantly in a network of people and stuff, like I live a totally different life than I think the one, like I
feel like you constantly,
I don't know.
what you were looking on.
I'm always looking, but it's
Yeah.
not like I would never say that the partners in my life lack anything. That's
Yeah.
not the way it comes. Right? If anything,
well, that's not the way that you consciously think of it. It's not the way that you would consciously think of it. I think that just from an outsider looking in who has felt like at times where I'm like, God, I really want to find or like I really need to talk to this person, this guy that I'm seeing. It's always been times where like, you know, my husband is a little busy at work, right? So I'm not getting enough attention or something like that.
Sure.
Like that's mostly what it's like. Probably it's usually seasonal, like when he's the busiest, and I'm like, hey, need a boyfriend, like. You know what I mean? And then we try to do something that's like never in state. So it's like always travel based so that there's no like lines being crossed or blurred. Even though like we're totally free to have emotional attachments and fall in love with whoever, just we try not to do anything at home based just so it doesn't get complicated.
Sure.
Stuff like that. So I don't know, like mostly we are monogamous, like day to day. But just I think we have realistic monogamy, which is like if something's there and you want to have a little fun, yeah, like, and that's it. But you know, honestly, I also since being so free, since we've allowed each other this freedom, really every time I'm with someone else, I'm like, oh, I miss my husband, and he's the same way. So I don't know. That's why I think that open relationships are a little iffy, and there's a line where it's like, oh, do you even like your partner? Because I've been friends with a lot of people who genuinely, I think, just don't like their primary partner. But
yeah, I mean that's a totally different beast, and I am always sad to see people who are practicing E&M, poly, or whatever the flavor is, and just like not being honest with themselves and not being honest with everybody involved in those kind of things. But I also, again, I live in that world where there's like, you know, 5 people living in a house with like kids and all kinds of things. And it's like,
that's crazy.
It's a totally different world. It's so wild.
Oh, I really struggle with that. Like there's some facets of my like political identity that are so conservative. And when I hear something like that, I'm like, the kids, you're fucking up the kids. Like I'm very, and I don't even know if there's
well-adjusted. It's like, it's so wild to me. I can't
like, how can that be true? How can that be true?
I will say this, that it's a few examples, but the only people I know of that are doing this would have already been the best fucking parents in a monogamous couple anyway.
Yeah.
And they're just like, they're so savvy. They're so in tune with like communication and things like that. And like being like some of these children are like, emotionally
the
mature.
Nuclear family is not fucking normal though, like, to be completely honest. Like this is a creation
Polya talks about that, about how like it's a village, and you know the sexes pair up with each other, and you know the men go do their thing and the women stay at home and yell at each other and talk about philosophy and raise the children together.
So I think the poly like networks that are doing that successfully are really just replacing, you know, the kind of traditional like family village with chosen family.
Yeah, when I think about, so it's hard because I think that there are different castes who are doing monogamy in different ways, or polyamory in different ways, right? So there's like the affluent white couples who are like me and my husband, who like if something goes wrong, we have a pretty, you know, thick safety net where like nothing's gonna go that crazy, right? Like. And then there are couples like in the Black community who are doing polyamory, and it's just detrimental to their community. So when I talk about open relationships, I'm always like, it's so culture to culture different. So like, yeah, something that like an affluent white couple can do, like a Black couple who's like in poverty on food stamps is never going to be able to do without consequence.
What? So I've never actually heard of this. What do you think the consequence is for?
So like a lot of Black women are sharing like one baby daddy, right? So like a lot of and because of that, he's tight on cash. He has no money to give any of them, and they're all effectively single mothers. Crime rates go up when they're single mothers. Murder rates go up also, just like female on female violence go up. Job insecurity. We've like tracked what polyamory or what polygamy, like multiple wives has like, done to societies over thousands of years, and like anthropologists have done this, and typically in poverty-stricken places, it is a huge detriment to the children.
Yeah, I mean, we in the community, we have spoken about the kind of like, it is a very luxury lifestyle until like, but it's another frustrating aspect of like privilege and however you want to like dialogue about it. Yeah, it's a very luxury lifestyle until you get to a point, and then it becomes very economic, and you're like, oh, look at all the ways we can save money. But you have like, it's like years of like the dating and the building in the same way that,
and that's also like a person with like who's okay with that sort of thing or having like conversations are usually very like therapized, and they're usually educated people. Yep. They're not people who are living in like Compton with a bunch of children who have like not so it's like it's really just like class based, like what you can get away with. So like when I think of like
I fully agree with that.
Open relationships or plural families, I'm thinking of like only wealthy white people, and that maybe they can do that, but like it's just they're probably about the only population who can. So I try to not even
acknowledge that.
Because I just think that it's so like unreachable for most of American, who's I think the median income is like $50,000 for like a dual income household at this point. I think in most places in America, it's under $80,000 dual income.
Yeah, and I mean you're not wrong, and this is a conversation that happens in my communities, right, where we talk about that level of like, what we participate in is clearly like layered in luxury and privilege, but is it still worthwhile? Like there's fucking awful reality shows now that are coming out with like poly aspects or couple to throuple and things like that. And it's like, is it still a net positive because it's like conceptually there are people who struggle, in dynamics that don't fit well for them. Like not even talking for full-blown poly. Full-blown poly are like hardcore hippies and they find themselves. But like monogamish, like I think so much like infidelity in monogamous relationships would be solved with those pressure valves. Like I think I agree. Right. So to me, we're out here on the fucking far axis. You don't need to worry about us. That's not right. But it brings the conversation into the middle. And if people are able to have that is a net positive in my
I think that's like I can totally. So for a couple years, I didn't I didn't work. I didn't go to school or anything. And my husband was like the breadwinner. And during those times, if I did have like a connection with someone, I felt like it was very strange. It added a dynamic of like, oh, so he's taking care of me and I'm stepping out. Like that's what it felt like. Or like I'm about to step out and he's completely taking care of me. And I was just like money is such a like money and power is so big in open relationships, even if you don't acknowledge it. Because now that things are,
you have to. It's such a
totally. Yeah. Now that things are more equal, it's like so different, especially if like he's busy and he's not seeing anyone and I am, and it's like there's all these conversations that are very difficult to have that are like they have so much weight in the relationship. So I really just feel like because to me I'm like, okay, it never felt fair to me to tell someone to not explore everything that they could about their life. It never felt fair to me to keep someone from experiencing anything, right? Especially if you love them. I'm like, oh, I'm keeping you from something, like, and us getting married at 25 and 30, then your life is supposed to change forever, and I'm cutting you off from experiences. That like doesn't feel good or fair to me. Thank God I found a husband who feels the same way. But there are some people who don't feel that way. But then I think that humans still have this like innate desire to step out.
Yeah, I think that's where the struggle is. Like when I was younger and like more of a swinger than the hippie flavor, a lot of guys were always like, how do you do what you do? And I'm like, do you want to watch your like significant other, your girlfriend, your wife, like get plowed by a bunch of people? Because if that's not something that you're into, you're probably not really into what I do. Like I'm a slut, and I'm all for it. Like I'm like, yeah, fuck everybody in the room. I'm gonna go fuck everyone over there. It's gonna be great.
That's deranged to even me.
Of course, I understand. Like I'm the
Rin's
token
degenerate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that's the kind of thing that, like, those conversations can be had. Like, you can talk, like, it is extremely difficult to navigate. And I think that if you're in a power imbalance or a financial imbalance, and it's like, oh, I am so busy, I don't have time to date, but you're free to do so. And if that isn't handled with extreme tact, it will likely end that relationship. But it doesn't mean it can't be done. It just means that it's like, that's a lot of like, I hate the fact that there's likely like aspects of permission being brought in, like, hey, I'd like to go on a date with this person, how would it feel best for you?
Totally. That's like the worst part, where it's like, how much am I allowing my partner to control me when we've agreed that we're not going to control each other, but also there are boundaries that we have. It's like a dance, right?
No, it really is. And it's I don't even know if it's performative or really trying to find balance.
Totally. It's hard because I'm like, am I doing this so that I don't feel like a bad person? Or like, do I really even care about your opinion? Like, it's hard, especially when you're given so much. Like, if you're allowed to be selfish in your relationship, I think that the human desire is just sort of to grab for more. So I don't know. It's hard. The whole thing's hard, but
yeah, I mean, like when I was younger, I think I would have been a lot more like here's a line, this is real, this is not, kind of thing. And now it's just, there's so much chaos and nuance. Like, it's like, to me, I could have the argument in so many different roundabout ways and still not have a concise answer. So it's like one of those things where it's like, having been a shitty person and grown into a less shitty person, I can tell that, like, it's worth it to try. And so that feels like that's where
totally. You just I mean, that's just relationship advice, is try to be a better person. Like, just try to go against your natural inclinations and urges and just try to be a better person. But what I was going to say was like, what has been like actually pretty normal throughout society, it was what I was going to say earlier, but I lost it and now it's back, is like rich women who didn't have to work knew that their husbands were stepping out and they didn't care because they had everything. Like, and it's so easy to do that when, like, you have everything. You can completely suspend your disbelief and be like, if he's a good father and he gives me enough attention, he can do whatever the fuck he wants. And that was sort of like when I entered this relationship and I didn't have to worry about any of that. I was like, I don't. And in high school, I was if a man even looked in the direction of like another woman, I would fucking freak the fuck out. Maybe it was because I was more insecure back then also, because now I'm sort of like, I'm so arrogant now that I'm like, go ahead, try to find someone better than me. Like, you're not going to. So maybe that's me. It's just a God complex. Maybe it's just a God complex at this point. But no, but really that, like, when he started making a lot of money, I was like, I mean, I'm so comfortable now that you really could do whatever you want. And if I still got to live this life, I'd be pretty stoked. Like, but so many people, obviously, that's not what most people have.
But I think if we can find a way to like, as somebody who also lives a flavor of that, like, it's like, if you can find a way to convey, it's like, if you break through these societal norms, or if you break through these sort of entrapments of like, because I think when women are like if you look at if your partner looks at somebody the wrong way and you flip out, that's like a controlling. You're like, I feel my control threatened, right? And somebody else. So it's like, to me, again, it might be performative, but it's like, the more you can tear down those kind of like, or even just aim to build relationships that have relatively equal footing, like, then you can negotiate or figure out, like, who are you as a person? Who am I? What are the vices I want to indulge? What are the ones that we should try to fucking tamp down?
Yeah, it is so funny to even intellectualize any of this, because I know, like, anytime my husband comes home after having sex with someone else, I'm like ravenous. I like need him. And it's so animalistic, right? Like, because I'd like to be above it, right? I'd like to be like, yes, do your thing. We have our own relationships. But there's a part of me that's just like, and I'm obviously very okay with it, but there is a part of me when he comes home smelling like another woman where I'm like, I need to show you that you're mine. And it's so animalistic. So, like, we intellectualize things like this and have these conversations, but we really are just animals that think we're gods. Like, we really are just literally animals. So
yeah, full send.
It's a constant dance. It's literally just a constant dance. All of it. All of this, everything we're ever talking about.
I will say, back to like the financial aspect of things and like financial dependence. One of my very feminist opinions is that women should always try to develop some sort of financial independence. Especially now, because I've been seeing a lot of women that are in relationships that they want to leave, but they can't because of it, and like bad relationships. And this is literally like 101 second wave feminism. How it all fucking kind of started was like
just common sense.
Yeah. But and it's my biggest worry with this kind of trad LARP that has happened on the internet where people are like, oh, like, well, the woman will just be dependent and the man is the provider and all of that, which is like, it's great, it's super fun, but like, one, that's really not even how history has, like, usually both partners worked. Like, there was, before the nuclear family,
It's a luxurious lifestyle to be a stay-at-home mother with no job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I worry because I think that there's a lot of people that are kind of like thinking that this is like the ideal. And it might be fun for a little bit. My fear is like, okay, what happens in like 10 or 20 years? And not even just the financial dependence part, but also the not having a way to express yourself in any way.
Yeah.
Outside of motherhood. I mean, I'm hope that the one good thing about like the trad TikTok thing is like at least they're getting to express themselves in that way.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's healthy psychologically.
Brandy, you want me to be honest with you if you become one of those people that like, no, you don't understand if you don't have a kid. Right, so I'm going to be your barometer because
I know
a few months ago we were big on,
how it's annoying when people say that when they're just like, well, you can't have an opinion because you don't have children yet. So when you have children, everything will change.
Yeah, so
and like you'll see the world in completely different eyes. And maybe that happens. Like maybe I'm gonna pop this baby out.
If it does.
I think it's very rare, and Camille Paglia talks about this. I think it's very rare for a woman after having children to find purpose outside of her children. Like I think most women will have children, and because of our bodies and because of our natural instincts, everything revolves around them. So I think the dream is that you can be a full-time mother and a part-time worker, like a very part-time worker. So that's like, and I think that is somewhat realistic. I really believe in hypergamy. I think that women are sexual selectors. I think they should be only choosing to like primary partnership with wealthy, adept, handsome, healthy men. And then the rest of the men become eunuchs. Genuinely, I think this. I think that this is the best model for society. I think that that's.
Well, men act like that's new.
Mom, it's not. It's of course.
I know that's been happening like throughout all of history. I think it's like very small percentage of men have like actually, procreated.
20% of the men, 80% of the women, kind of thing like that.
Yeah, it was something like that. I can't remember the numbers, but it's like a small percentage of men actually get to like procreate with like 80% of the women. So like,
yeah. So I believe that women can have their dreams of being a stay-at-home mom. They definitely should have something on the side, some sort of creative outlet or like mom groups or stuff like that. Like I think I have a doula certification, and part of our learning academics was talking about how lonely women were in the West. They're the loneliest after giving birth in the West out of any other country. We have basically no sense of community after having children. So there's like mothers are just extremely depressed at rates that like unprecedented, especially right now in the digital age. So I think that women should definitely have hobbies or dreams. But like I said, Camille Paglia talks about how women on average, just like after you have kids, your whole life centers around your kids. So if women want to be able to do that, I think there's a few key things that you should do. Like one, don't have children with someone without getting married. Don't do it. I do not think that should ever be an option. We've seen when it's done to the Black community, it's a bad idea. I think that you absolutely need to instate some sort of safety net if you have a man's children. If he does something like leave you or trade you out for a newer model, you absolutely need to have that safety net of alimony or child support. Especially if imagine you leave the workforce for 15 years to raise your children and you have nothing, right? Like there are women
that's
who.
That's why I'm more so against. I'm very big on like figuring out ways to get women more involved into remote work. Like, so that they have that option to, I think remote work needs to be very normalized for mothers and like flexibility. Obviously this is like has to be like kind of a cultural thing because you can't really force companies to like create this kind of work culture. But I do think that's a big part of it. I don't know about alimony. Child support makes more sense to me, but it depends.
Child support's nothing though. Child support is nothing. Alimony is where you're getting the money. Yeah. Like my mom, when her and my dad got divorced, she got I think $50 a fucking month for child support, but she got $1,000 in alimony. So there's just no way, and especially with child support too, with like I honestly, I don't think that you should be having children with a man who can't make you a stay-at-home mom. Genuinely, like, I think that there's some people who are just well suited to just like not have kids. Or if you really want kids.
I mean, to me,
that was a very well phrased sentence. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, like if you're taking a look at your life and you can't like think that you don't think that you can afford it, or if something bad happens that one of the parents can afford having children and giving them a good life, don't fucking have the kids.
I mean, yeah. My fiance, he offered I could be a stay-at-home mom if I wanted, but I don't think that would bring me happiness. But who knows? I'm also, because I am so passionate about financial independence, and because I've actually have seen this with my mom and a lot of people in my lives. Like my mom in particular, she's now in her 70s and she has raised kids her whole life. And she is like obsessed with her children, right? Obsessed with my little sisters, tries to helicopter parent them. You know, like this is like her hobby. Her children are her hobby, or her children are her life. They are growing up, and now everyone is like out of the house for the most part. My 25-year-old sister still lives there, but I'm one of 8, so it's a lot of us. And so a lot of them like have already like they're leaving the nest, and my mom like it made me cry because she was like crying and she was upset because she was like, I don't have anything. Like I don't what else do I have? Like because I told her that she needed to like find like a hobby or because she was like basically pushing my little sisters away by like, you know, hyper focusing on everything that they did. Yes, like they're in their late teens, early 20s, you know, like the 19 and 20. So they're ready to
that's fresh. That's fresh, to be fair. So she's just freshly an empty nester, and she's probably freaking out about
fresh. She is freaking out about it. But and she doesn't know what to fill her time with, and she doesn't know what to do. Because her whole life since she was 16, she had her first child at 16, to 70 has been filled with children. And now she is, you know, lost. And
I think that's a matter of time, though. I think she's probably just knee-jerk feeling the separation, and I think that she will find things that she likes to do, whether it be knitting or getting really into Jeopardy or things like that. Because in the winter of your life, you have to find just little things that get you through the day. But it sounds like she had a very purposeful, like, long stretch of her life where she felt extremely fulfilled. And there are women like that. I don't think I'm one of those women. I'm going to school to get a PhD so I can have, like, a job. I'm not going to have kids probably until I'm like 30 something. Like I'm not even in my mind right now. So there are some women though who genuinely like all they want to do is be mothers, and they will be incredible mothers. And I think that not unfortunately, fortunately for society, I think that's probably the majority of women who will just find most of their purpose in motherhood. But obviously there should be room for the women who are different and who don't feel that way.
With a lot of my friends that have kids though. So all of my friends that have kids for the most part, like in-person friends.
Are they young?
Like they're around 36.
The kids, are the kids young?
Oh. Yeah, around 7. Like there's a range. Okay. So I would say some are like babies, but some are like around like 7 or 8. Yeah. But they're all very much like have other outside like passions. And I don't actually know any personally that don't. Like the only trad like wife people that I know are very much like on the internet. Like the kind of stay-at-home
trad wives don't exist. They like genuinely don't exist.
I know a few who but I know some like biotech VC money folk who have that kind of like, you know,
like stay at home.
That's different. Yeah. That's like a whole other. And then they're not really like, they're not Christians. They're not like modest. They're not like there's this idea of like trad wife and Chad who like live in the farm or whatever. Like just doesn't fucking
the ballerina farm people.
Yeah. I mean, even she has like runs her own like multi businesses, right? Like even she is not like a trad wife. So
I know exactly.
It's not. It's a whole thing.
It's a LARP. Yeah. It's a LARP, and it is kind of like it's a way for it, because it's a lifestyle aesthetic. So they're basically selling the lifestyle, but like like the ballerina farm girl, she 100%.
Those are also women who are deeply affected by generational misogyny. I think like those are women who are deeply affected with what the men in their lives say that women should do. Like I
you
don't think
her
that
in particular, like her
the Mormon
opinions?
religion,
Oh, for
religion
sure.
is extremely patriarchal. I mean, when men and women die, men get their own planet and they get to keep all of their wives there. So like women get nothing. It's very much like you are
Islam's
tethered
like
to your
that
husband.
too.
Exactly. So there's like, I think that those women are like just deeply embedded with misogyny and like cannot crawl their way out, but they're like trying to rationalize that they are people with interests, and also that their whole life doesn't need to be about their kids, but the men around them are like, no, this is your job. You should love this. And then they're like trying to convince themselves that they do love it, even though kids are annoying and messy and stupid most of the time.
Well, it does make sense how they would create basically a creative outlet around their children so that they can still have that creative outlet.
Totally.
I mean, this is what the feminine mystique was all about. Like from the 1950s, it's like a bunch of housewives were feeling like they had no way to creatively express themselves, and that they like, because a lot of them would go to college, but their only reason for going to college was to meet a husband.
Find a husband.
They'd meet a husband, they'd get married, they'd settle down in the suburbs. It was the nuclear family. They'd be lonely as fuck. They'd get addicted to drugs, whatever pill the doctor gave them, you know. But and it was down to this aspect of like not being able to like really express themselves. The benefit, I guess, of social media, you know, is that it gives people that outlet. I don't know how healthy it is.
Totally. And
like,
moms fucking inflate the markets for so many products. It's insane. Stanley Cup? Like I keep telling my husband, who runs like he has a business, but it's mostly like a men's business. I'm like, you gotta find a fucking way to get those moms on board, because that is just a crazy industry to break into. Like to be just like a women's, like it's so lucrative to sell things to women, and it's mostly because of bored moms.
And moms. Yeah, nerds and moms.
Totally.
Well, that was kind of part of it too. With like the 1950s was like the consumer mom.
Yeah.
Well, that was it was like a whole like shift in the way like things work, where it was like, this is what the family needs to like, oh, this is what like the stay-at-home mom like wants to make her life better or more interesting, or keeping, like, now you had two people to sell to Keeping Up with the Joneses instead of one, and it was a dramatic shift.
Yeah, totally.
But it's interesting thinking a lot about like, are you kind of like, you're one of those people that's like, there should be less people having kids, and the people who should be having kids should be having
I'm
kids.
an actual eugenicist. I'm not even, I know that a lot of people get freaked out when I say that. I don't think we should kill anyone. I'm not like a Nazi. I don't think we should put people in gas chambers, except for a couple. Actually, maybe we should put a couple of people in gas chambers. Just kidding. But I think that women are naturally eugenicists, and I think that we should really rely on that. I think that
I think that the problem with eugenics comes from institutionalized eugenics, as opposed to like individual people being like, I want to choose good genes for my like mating partner.
Yeah, I
don't think anyone's upset about.
Totally. But I also think that there should be like, I think probably that we should legislate not allowing certain birth defects, like not allowing women to have certain birth defects, which I know is taking away from her body. But if we want to live, I'm also a socialist, and I think that socialism works the best when we're all healthy and we can all contribute, right? So like we can't have both at the same time.
Oh, so me and you will definitely differ there. I'm a libertarian,
I'm also a geneticist, so this is a fun one. But it's really interesting to think, because like I think a lot of people would agree with the spirit of that, but there's almost no way to implement that in a way that doesn't like, you know, like where do you, because like first of all, you have to trust your government to implement that correctly. So like,
totally. No, I understand the pitfalls. Like I'm talking about my dream world, right? I'm talking about right now we can test for Down syndrome at 15 weeks. Right. Yep. So I'm thinking like, you know, especially with the modern medicine breakthroughs that we've made in the past 20 years, I think in the next 50. So this is what I talk about all the time, is that we're talking about stupid shit like gender and transgenderism and equality and all this shit right now, when we are at the precipice of something huge, which is that our lifespan is going to be increased by like 50 years, like very quickly. And then when we are getting older, and then there are so many people who are not dying, there's going to be a lot of issues.
So I actually think that the lifespan is going to be a class divide, as opposed to
that's also true. Yes. Right. Yes. Like,
So like we are already seeing, you know, the gulf between like premium like medical care and which is possible. So like likely what we'll see is the increase of the retirement age and a
Yes.
whole subset of people that just no longer get to retire because they're going to die before they do.
Yes.
And then you have like the people who have lots of money can do these treatments and like extend, like it's as somebody who like works at a company that does research on extending quality of life. It's really, it's scary. Like there's conversations that could very easily be like, that's a dystopian future we're talking about.
Totally. But we're moving towards it like pretty quickly. So it does just make me feel a little it's funny when it to like go online and see like Trump versus Kamala or whatever, when I'm like, guys, in 2 generations things are going to look radically different. I think eugenics is going to be like a huge thing, and I think people are already getting like how can I talk about this in a way that is sensitive?
We always appreciate.
Don't worry about us.
Yeah, I think. Well, I don't want to come off as being insensitive to a population that I think that there's already racial tension that is building in a lot of places, and I think especially in places like Western places like the UK and America, we're seeing what poverty does to minorities, and we're seeing like the type of. I think a lot of people, even people who aren't racist, are getting a bit nervous about something like replacement theory. Like, I think that we're seeing cultures change our way of life in a way that even white Americans who wouldn't call themselves racist are not comfortable with. So, like, even, you know, people who won't call themselves racist being like, okay, really, Kamala, free healthcare for illegal immigrants? What do you mean?
So,
you know what I mean? Like, there's stuff like that.
That's a bad idea.
So, I mean, like,
yeah, of course it's a bad idea, right?
When we talk about, like, to me, anytime you get into like race and eugenics as like, you know, the kind of dialogue.
Well, that's where it goes naturally, right?
Well, it's interesting because there's never really been science to prove anything in a genetic basis that way. It's always
no, of course, I absolutely agree. But when, you know, like you talk about how there's going to be like a super rich class who live longer. This is where like race comes into it. Where like if we're trying to breed out people who are more predisposed to poverty, we're going to put more abortion clinics in Black neighborhoods, which is already happening.
Who's more predisposed to poverty genetically?
Nobody genetically.
Right. So then you can't breed it out. You can only
stupid people. Right.
Sure, but stupid people breed more.
No, totally. And this is why I think that there's a huge incentive, and there should be a huge incentive for Black people to have some pretty serious conversations with each other. Because I don't think that it's intrinsic to your race or your how much melanin is in your skin for you to be stricken by poverty or to be stupid. But I think that there's a lot of cultural shifts that need to be shifted, or they will just fall behind, which I don't want to see. I don't think any white person who isn't racist wants to see Black people fail. But there's sort of like there's a huge taboo around talking about anything like this, especially as white people.
Well, because this wasn't so if we go back in time to like the 1800s, and there was like I'm really big into like the concept of mutual aid and community building and all of that stuff, and I've been reading this book called Mutual Aid to the Welfare State, and it talks about how African American communities were actually like huge parts of this. They would create these fraternal orders, and like Black Wall Street was kind of somewhat a part of this. They would start these communities, which would, because obviously an aspect of it was segregation. So they were basically creating their own Black communities with their own Black stores, their own Black everything. And some Black people were actually for segregation because of this, because it was like economically beneficial for them, you know?
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. I don't think that I think that is like the cultural issue that really started to happen with the welfare state, with once we got to the welfare state and people were able to no longer depending on these like voluntary associations that they would be able to create with each other. And this didn't just affect Black communities, but I think it's affected the way that America really functions in general. We used to really lean on voluntary associations like fraternal orders and these like kind of like communities, even nonprofits, like the way that they functioned in the 1800s are completely different than how they function now. And I think that that kind of changed the culture, or like the within like the Black community in particular.
Well, it's interesting, and I talk about this a lot, and people get very mad at me, but I don't. I obviously don't think it's intrinsic to the Black race, because Black women are doing really well. I mean, considering they're doing incredible. They get most of the degrees of their demographic, of the Black of the race demographic. They are they have higher employment rates than the Black men, higher education rates, like master's degrees, doctorates, you know, stuff like that. They are the most likely to date hypogamously, which means that they date someone who doesn't make as much money as they do, which is very interesting to me. So there's like it. So I mean, we could, as white people, we can sit here and talk about what the problem with Black men is all day, but but it is very interesting to me, because I feel like Black women do not have the problems that Black men have. So what is it then? If it's because their crime rates are crazy, their unemployment rates are crazy, their domestic violence rates are crazy. So it's just like, what's going on? What's going on with Black men?
Thomas Sowell would bring this back to like probably the welfare state. Like that would have. I think that that's what he has kind of said was, women can't because the single mother issue.
I think it's personal responsibility.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think
because
that's
black, yeah, obviously, as a libertarian, you definitely agree with that. But there's been Black men have obfuscated the blame to their Black women forever. They've been like, what can you do to make us better? And they're like, well, we're doing it. And they are doing it. And Black men still are fucking up. So I don't know. I don't know if it's cultural degeneracy. I think that there's also like there was a huge problem after Black Floyd. Help me, George Floyd. After George Floyd, where like we saw this criminal who like held a gun to a pregnant woman's stomach, and who was caught multiple times with charges of like multiple, and then they were like, oh, the problem is over policing. That's the problem, right? And then all of my generation took to the streets, and they were like, how could you have killed this man without understanding, like, without even seeing the full video, without anything? Like, there's huge push for the Black man to have like the utmost empathy that Black women don't get because of misogyny, right? The Black women will never get because they're angry and because whatever. So there's like, I think that there's a cultural excuse that we've made for Black men, and I'm not making it anymore. As a white woman, I don't care if it makes me look racist. I care about Black women, right? So I'm gonna be very brazen about how I feel about the behavior of collective Black men. Because as a community, they're just because America is so racially diverse, and that's what makes us so great, right? I want to keep diversity, but if Black women's most successful marriages are with white men, and then their most successful marriages are with white men, and then their most successful marriages are with white men, then we just have a white population. So
I don't know if I follow that entirely. When I mean, I'm not educated enough on these subjects to be able to speak meaningfully, but to me, like, we're putting the blame for people, like, let's say, not Black men not taking personal responsibility, but we have to acknowledge that it's a complex situation, right? Now,
totally.
I'm not saying that like there's I
don't think that they should be all put in jail and gas chambers. I'm just saying that there needs to be some tough conversations.
So
I think that this is a cultural thing. Like, okay, how do you shift culture? But I also feel this way about like the victim mentality within women too. Like, so when we talk about personal responsibility, I think that this is like, and I agree with you. I do think that this is definitely an issue with like within Black culture, but also within a lot of different people are kind of having this issue with personal responsibility, and I think that that's something that kind of needs to just be changed. I don't know how we fucking change it. Like maybe something in like education, like how we teach people I mean,
Totally. I think that we should allocate every dollar that we are spending to go to Ukraine and Israel should be put into the Black community. Every single dollar, I think. I genuinely like to waste all of that money when there are like huge problems that are like rearing their ugly head and will just get worse in America, I think is very ridiculous.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't go. Obviously, I'm more for like privatization of these issues. So I think that like
I'm pretty authoritarian, yeah.
Yeah, I'm very much more. I think there's ways for us to create like I said, voluntary associations to fix these things culturally. It's just no one fucking does it. Like, we can do these things. I think that we have gotten to a point where people feel like we need to have the government do things for us, but like we really don't. Like, anyone can start a nonprofit, or you can literally start a fucking mutual aid society tomorrow and help Black people and like create an environment to do that. Like,
I just see like
do that.
Yes, I think that's true, but we're just those things exist and nobody does them. Like, we see that like the richer a Black person gets, the further they move away from other Black people. The same thing with white people. Like, they're just and they don't like there. I think that there needs to be like government structure to force people to do these things. And we shouldn't. I just think that there should be government structure. Like, I think that it absolutely should be a necessity of our tax dollars.
I always weighed in with this sort of thing where it's like, I don't think like handouts are necessarily the best structure, but building I'm a big fan of like building like live work facilities where it's like, oh, we'll make a bunch of fucking things, and it's like you get the opt-in. It's like, hey, I'm not making it in our capitalist structured society. I'd like to get the program, and you go and you live somewhere, you work somewhere, you get like and that's a government built sort of like, this is the baseline. Like, if you're willing to work, we will feed you, house you, and give you basic entertainment.
I guess I don't.
I'm not saying reparations straight into the pockets like UBI. I'm talking about reparations like directly into schools. I'm talking about after school programs. I'm talking about better schools. I'm talking about paying those teachers more. Like, seeing where we have a need, seeing where children's test scores are lower, and creating like safety nets and programs for those people to catch up.
The issue with that, there's an issue with this already, because this already happens in Massachusetts where, like, so for example, you go to in Boston, I can't remember one of the Boston schools, it's like, I think it's around like almost 20,000 per kid. Like, it's crazy how much money goes into these schools, and these schools are fucking trash. And I'm talking about the public schools, not private schools. The private schools in Massachusetts are great, but they have a lot of fucking trash public schools. The problem is that government cannot fucking manage their resources very well. So like, you can say like, oh, well, we should have our tax dollars going into these places, but they're just not going to use the money correctly. That's the problem. In my opinion, I just don't think government is very good with spending money. I had friends even that worked at the MBTA.
Yeah, but the government not being good at spending money isn't the point. It might be inefficient. It maintains a baseline, right? So like, if you go into a privatized thing, it allows basically, like,
it's more efficient because it's incentivized.
It might be more efficient.
It might be.
It might be. There's not a guarantee that it will.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, like, when the government does it, it has to, like, everybody has to have access. Whereas privatized allows you to have, these people can be helped, or these people. And so then you allow for a third party to determine who gets and who does not.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that there are probably certain people that
well, that's the fundamental. As a society, we have to decide what we are willing to tolerate as our not our upper echelons, our lower echelons, and we are failing in that regard.
Totally.
Okay, so pivot. Speaking of Black men, I have a pivot. This is gonna be fun.
Speaking of Black men.
Yeah, that was speaking of Black men. Was this guy? He's so fun.
Oh my god, is he even Black?
Is he not?
I think he's some.
Are we three white people going to be guys? We got to be.
I absolutely am.
All right, guys.
I'm not.
I'm dropping this Black guy. He's not even Black.
I think he is, but
I know he is. I think is also Middle Eastern.
You should hear the shit Ryan, you would not feel any sort of sympathy for this man if you looked at his Twitter, okay? So
And also heard the way he talks about black women.
I'm down to hate individuals all day long.
You're always going to get the last laugh. Understand this, guys. I know it's tough. You're young. You're trying to get the girls. You don't got the money. You don't got the clout. Whatever it is. Understand this. Work hard now so you can have your fun later. And these girls that are curving you now in their youth, when they're the best looking at 20, 21, 22, they're going to come running back to you when you're in your 30s and you're attractive. And then you're going to go back and date those 21-year-olds that you lost to those same 30-year-olds, man. Work hard and understand your value comes with time. Women are like spoiled milk. Men age like wine. Peace.
oh my god.
Yeah, obviously.
This is very common all over Twitter. I see.
Yeah, I see this everywhere. I think this is the stupidest thing ever. And I just made a tweet about this. Like, first of all, what is it? 60% of miscarriages are from sperm defects. So there's that. So the older you get, the less likely that your sperm is to be like the best quality sperm ever. And it decreases after 40. So you can still have a child, and the chances that the child is healthy after 50, 60 is still high, right? But there's obviously, like autism, male inherited like child autism rates go up the higher the older you are in your contribution to sperm. Also, like, women don't like saggy balls. Like, women don't like aging. Like, young women don't like aging skin, right? Like, women are also attracted to youth. They're not attracted to like old, angry,
Guys get really
misogynistic
mad when we say this. Like,
Yeah.
I've noticed this on Twitter. Like, if you're like, when I was 19, I thought like a 30-year-old was really old. I thought someone in their 30s was really old. It's like, I wasn't attracted to people that much like that older than me. Like, I dated a 30-year-old when I was 19, and it was so weird. Like, I remember being like, why do you like me? I live in a sorority. Like, I can't even go to the bar.
Well, that's why he liked you.
Like, I don't like it. Like, I just didn't. One, that was weird, but it also felt like I was kissing someone that was like old. Like, it felt like it was an old person, and that's not even that extreme of an age difference. Like, I wouldn't even judge a 30-year-old for dating a 20-year-old that much. Like, I'd be like, you know what, like, whatever. But like, these people that are like, when you're in your 40s, you'll be able to date the 20-year-old, and I'm just like, oh god, like, extreme.
You're selecting for a type of woman at that point also, who would go for a man just because you're established and rich, who will put their attraction to you on the back burner. And obviously, men, if you're watching this, that's how women that's why women have pool boys. Like, that's why women have gardeners. That's why women step outside the marriage, right? If you're not fundamentally attracted to your husband, how do you think a partnership is going to work?
I do think that men who kind of like idolize or fantasize about that also were people who were struggling, right? Like, it's one of those things where, like, the people who didn't date well are like, oh, well, once I get money, it will make it easy. And then it does in a way, but it's like a trap, right? Like, that being dateable is a skill that you can cultivate. Like, some people are naturally good at it or whatever, but like, you can get better at it. You can get better at socializing. You can get better at being like charming and all these sort of things. And I mean, I hate to speak to stuff that's like in Kyle's, like the red pill or any of that crap, but like, like, self-improvement is a thing that improves your ability to connect with people and, and connection and spark and all that. I just, like, as somebody who like dates lots of people and dates an age range, it's, to me, I am like always flat. I mean, I also I'm team no kid, so I guess like none of it matters when it's like, if you're not, So I all the people who don't want to have kids are self-selecting themselves out and then having fun on the side. So we don't care about a lot of the like, oh, I need to pick a dad as well as somebody I'm deeply attracted to, as well as a life partner. Like, that's a whole different set of math and calculus that you need to worry about. And I get it. I get why people would stress about that. Like, I don't, but I don't have to have that stress because I can live my life. But so you can have the people who are, I don't know, like, as somebody who's in the late 30s, like mid 20 something, still like seem to like chirp at me. but
Sure.
you know, and I don't know that I have a problem with that, right? Like obviously for me, but like in general, like Brandy, are you thinking that like
I don't think mid-20s is also different. To be
yeah,
fair,
I think the spoiled milk thing, like, there are very hot women who are 35, 40. Gillian Anderson is still a fucking smoke show. So I don't know.
35, guys.
I date women older than me.
Yeah.
I love dating sexy older women. Like,
Sure, like I don't. There's this. I don't know. Myron, I think, displays extreme antisocial behavior and attitudes. Like I think that he is not like the normal guy. So I try not to get like too mad at it. That there's just like a population of these men who are in that it's somehow a majority. Like I know that he's obviously just in his own thing, and then speaking to young men, indoctrinating them. But even those men will grow up also, like the 19-year-olds he's talking to, and be like, I'm 27. I actually really want a girlfriend. I actually really want a wife. I actually really want children, or I want these things like most of the population. So I try not to get too upset about it. But Myron is really just making money off of like a very sad population, like, and it's just a grift. Like the future that or what he's selling in that video is like, sure, it might be true, but he's selling you unhappiness, like, because most people want to pair up in their 20s and their 30s, and they want to feel love, and that's just what people want to do. And men also, like, with back in my Dworkin days, I was like, all men are antisocial freaks and we should, they're so different than us. But, after growing up a little bit and going outside and touching grass, I realized that, men and women are not so different. We mostly want the same things. We want to feel love. And some of us want to have children, maybe not you, but most of us want to have children, and we want to find purpose through our children, and we want to want them to grow up around our family and create little communities. And the man who just wants to grind and make money and fuck bitches is like such a minority, and they're also just like, it's just so antisocial. Like those people, like Myron, I don't think is even capable of living any other lifestyle because of a mental deficiency.
Because to me it's the grift, and like I don't know how much of that is a character versus like whatever, but
because they're also not making that much money, so I don't know what the fuck he's talking about.
I mean, I know that's all these people who are always trying to sell, like you said, like sadness or anger. It's very easy to sell anger to like.
To men especially. Yeah. Oh yeah.
I think that's what worries me about these people, though. Like even whatever podcast is that, but you telling me that it's a bunch of like Indians kind of makes me feel a little better. But like I'm worried that it's like getting to like these young, like, because 12, 13-year-old boys getting on the internet, that's my fear, is that they're kind of becoming
well, the real problem is the loneliness epidemic, right? Like the real problem is that these people don't have friends or family that are telling them like the truth, so then they get caught in this meat grinder. And I talked about this also, like in the article that I wrote for EV magazine, that there will always be a class of unchosen men, right? There will always be short men, poor men, ugly men who are not chosen. And now with social media, they've found camaraderie in chat rooms and other things, and they've just allowed their resentment to build. So is that just like a reality now, after like in a post-internet world where you can just find people who are as unhappy as you, and then it can become something potentially nefarious, like the Supreme Gentleman, like, Elliot Roger, right? Like it can become something like that, or it can become something different, like that one guy who said what it's like to be too ugly for a relationship, and then in the comment section that one woman was like, I think you're kind of cute, and now they got married. I don't know if you know about him, but like but yeah, there's men like that who, like, just through having like a good attitude and friendly disposition will end up getting married. But there are a lot of men who just will never be chosen and will maybe die alone or have to. And there used to be things like the church, like men used to devote their lives to God if they were like unchosen.
Like Paul the Apostle was really short and bald, so and he popped off, dude. Like, come on.
there used to be larger purposes, but now in the age of social media, where like you're supposed to have a car and you're supposed to have bitches and you're supposed to have all these things, and with the absence of God, these men have nowhere to go.
But
not even just the church. I think they could have like men would be like, okay, let's find like a purpose to do something, like to do something in the world, like innovative, like go invent something. Like
it's hard to make a nihilist believe in purpose, though, which is why I bring up God.
Was
But,
Thomas
so-
Edison a fucking like 10? Like, was he a Chad? Probably fucking not. Like,
Yes, but the most unchosen men are also not geniuses. They're also like mid-curve IQ. So,
But
but
I-
a lot
I
of geniuses
think
in
that's
the
a culture.
past didn't do well with women. Like, a lot of them were kind of struggling with women, like, or like they ended up like not getting married.
sure, but
So-
those men will find purpose outside. We need this thing for like the mid-curve ugly people, and it is just God. Like that is just it.
I want to push back on that because I think that's a cop out, right? Like
Certainly.
like because that works, but then you
Yeah.
get all the problems that come with religion.
Sure.
And so
Sure,
to
and then we
me-
end up here, literally 30 years
Well,
later.
it depends on
100
if
years
it's
later.
authentic. Like, I don't think
Well-
that you should look at religion as like.
I don't want
Like
to
if-
get rid of religion. I don't want to get rid of God. But what I want to do is have a culture that allows for the push of purpose outside of these like kind of classic relationships and children, because that's really who's being left behind. And Brandon, we've had this conversation before where having kids is easy mode for purpose, but it's not the only
Yeah.
exclusive path to it. And I think that we as a society need to celebrate more the people who are just quietly content. And it's like,
Sure, but this is where, I mean, this is literally where philosophy, like this is where Nietzsche, this is where John Paul Sartre comes into play. Like there are some people who you just like cannot. There are some people who will never, ever, ever, ever convince themselves to have an internal sense of purpose, ever,
sure,
ever,
and
ever,
that's,
ever.
but that's fine. But my belief is that
You think that's a high percentage?
I think it's a low percentage.
I
think
yeah.
the number
I think it's
of people-
moderate.
Sure. All
So,
right, we have our curve,
I'm gonna
but
be
I think that
optimistic.
there are people who would do well in a slightly shifted culture, and they would find, because I think that we kind of encourage kids to go big or go home, right? And it's like if you're not inventing the biggest company or going to the
Sure.
moon, right? Then it's like then what do you matter, right? And it's like there's so many people who are out who just figured it out. Like, oh yeah, I run a fucking fishing company for bachelor parties, and I'm fucking stoked. I love it. You know,
But how do you convince someone that when it feels so good to be cruel? How do you convince when you're angry and it feels so good to be cruel? How do you convince that person just to be kind because you can? Like, how do you do that?
So it is
It's fear.
as somebody,
And
who
that's why
lives-
God
Fear
is
of
so
God.
important. Yes, it is. That's the only thing, because as people, human beings, we're still animals, our biggest things are like desire and fear.
I don't think
So,
that it's
like-
working though, because like all of these
Nothing
like,
works.
Myron-
Nothing will ever work. We're going to be in a standstill and have this conversation a billion times until the sun explodes, right?
I was
But-
gonna say Myron's like Muslim, right, and all that. They're all like pushing this like Christian ideology. Like Andrew Wilson is like this.
oh my God,
And like
Andrew
and, like,
Wilson. Oh my
He's the
God,
worst.
Andrew Wilson. Oh my God.
like Eastern Orthodox guy. Like all of these people.
He's
are,
like, the woman should be quiet and his wife is louder than him. It's like genuinely just like the funniest thing ever. Like their whole thing.
But these people are pushing this. Like, yes, religion is the answer, but I don't think it's making people kinder.
Well, it's the Midwest.
I don't think it's making any of these.
No,
people
it's definitely
kinder.
not.
Or their Christ is King in the bio
Well, they knew.
dudes.
So I don't know if you know this about the Wilsons, but they're new to religion.
Yeah. Well, how
So they're like a couple years new. And they really found it after grief, after they lost their child. So they have a lot of anger. They have a lot of fear, but it's for like different reasons than just like existentialism, right? They didn't get into it because they needed purpose. They got into it because they were like they needed to feel. I mean, that's why Andrew Wilson has a debate podcast. That's why he's like, I'm the king of debates, is because he wants to feel important and special. They live in the Midwest. There's nothing out there. They've lost children. They're going to be empty nesters. Like they have, like Rachel doesn't really have anything other than social media. Andrew's never felt any sort. I mean, Andrew's literally like kind of an ugly, balding, fat guy. Where is he ever going to get the rush of adrenaline that is social media, right? So he's created this perfect life where he can tweet something or something and make someone really mad, garner all this attention, and what he doesn't realize is that that's actually his purpose over God. If he was really someone who cared about God, he wouldn't be doing any of the shit that he's doing. So you think we talk about him like he's a God influencer, but he's really just an influencer about God. So it's not like there's not really anything. That's the problem is social media in that sense.
Yeah.
It's not like that there's God, because God is nowhere to be found in anywhere of Andrew's ramblings online because he's completely centering himself, and his wife is doing the same thing. And also, yeah. So I don't know about that, but there are some people who like. In every, like, if you go outside and you touch grass, like, my husband's family is very religious, and it's made them extremely kind people. It's made them.
Mormon,
it's giving.
Because you're in Utah.
No. They're Catholic. He's Irish Catholic. I love the Irish Catholics. Incredibly docile men, the Irish Catholics. Unless you get a couple drinks in them, but you just keep the drinks away, and it's fine. But yeah, really love the Irish Catholics. They're almost Jewish, but a little more shame. It's very similar though. It's very similar. If you can't find a Jew, find an Irish Catholic. But yeah, so it's just made them like kinder people, and these are just simple people who live every day like, you know, like it's a new day, and who aren't tied up in social media, and it's given them a sense of purpose that I think that they really enjoy. I mean, women find a lot of women go back to the church after having kids, like after being empty nesters. More women flock to the church than men do because they're trying to find a purpose, and usually it actually helps. Like, religious people have the like really low levels of depression. So
well, I think when it's genuine, it absolutely can, and when
totally.
it's real, I think that the issue is like this like kind of fake social media thing,
yeah,
like fake social media Christian thing. I don't know, where it's like not,
it's just ego, which is the opposite of religion.
It's more about like shaming others, being self-righteous, feeling superior. Yes. And it's less about actually having a relationship with God. Like, in truth, the truth is social media, like the word sin in Keoan Greek it means missing the mark, and it's basically just means like you separating yourself from God. You know, like it's like you're, and anytime we're fucking like focused on social media or like obsessed with getting basically any type of addiction is missing the mark. So like Andrew Wilson can talk shit about OnlyFans girls and all of these people that are sinning, but like he's doing the exact same thing. Like
totally.
It's all the same.
Wait, the influencers are hypocrites? There's no way. That's never.
Yes. Never. Yeah. This has been a very fun conversation though. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking me to be on. Sorry if I said the wrong thing sometimes. I'm still learning how to come off better to an audience.
Oh, don't worry. I'm probably the least offended person ever.
I'll just drop this podcast if my...
Yeah, Rin is the one that's more scared. I've already been canceled before and everything, so like I'm fine, but like he's the one that's like actually terrified of that stuff. Yeah. I don't really give a shit. But so want to tell people where they can find you and all that fun stuff?
So I have a Substack, which is I actually am changing the name, so don't actually forget I said that. I do have a Substack. You can find it linked to my social media, which is at Phemoid on Twitter. That's probably the only place that you want to see me. The other stuff is just like normal everyday stuff. But if you think I'm cute and you want to follow me on Instagram, it's at how to grow delphiniums. It's a kind of a hard word to spell, but you can Google. Actually, don't go Google how to grow delphiniums, because then you'll just get a bunch of gardening tips. But look it up on social media, and that's where I am. And yeah, I tweet about. I mostly tweet to make people angry because it makes me money. Sorry, but I also occasionally have a moment of clarity where I talk about things that I think should be influenced to other people. So you can follow me for that. It's specifically on @Phemoid on Twitter. So.
Rin, nothing.
Come on.
Yeah, I know. He's my non-internet friend. Love it. It doesn't do the social media or any of that stuff.
I got an Instagram.
I got a Facebook.
I'm on the Facebook.
Well, thank you everybody for hanging. This was very fun. I would love to have Phemoid on again, so hopefully we can do that.
I'd love to.
All right. GG's, y'all.